A full renovation on a family bathroom in just 10 days. Well, last time you watched me do all the first fixing for this family bathroom and we fell a little bit behind. And because this is the only bathroom in this 1970s property, falling behind put me under a little bit of pressure from the missus and kids.
Have you finished that bathroom yet?
But this is episode 2 and this is an opportunity to try and catch up. We're going to get the floor down, we're going to get the thermosphere underfloor heating fully installed, and hopefully we're going to get something a little bit special on these walls. So stick around. The great British weather, I'm getting soaked because you don't want to miss this one. So last time you saw me build the box section to fit the bath in. I've now lifted the bath in position temporarily, and what I've done is marked out on the floor there where the tiles are going to go up to. So I'm going to tile up to the feet of the bath. But before I tile the floor, we need to get the underfloor heating down. And that's why I've marked out where the bath will be, because I don't want my underfloor heating mat underneath the bath. So I don't need to Jacko board that bit. And now I'm going to prime it with SBR, and that'll seal the floor so that the tile adhesive sticks to the floor really nicely and we can get the Jacko boards down. So let's get a big brush and get some of this stuff on the floor. You can see that by using a big brush like this, you can get really good coverage on that timber floor. You can see this stuff goes off kind of like a layer of glue across the top of the surface. It goes kind of a bluey colour as it starts to go off and goes really tacky. Doesn't take too long at all. Then once it's dry, we can get on with the floor. So this is day 5. We're a little bit behind. I really need to get the floor done today, and then we can start thinking about getting this bathroom built back up. So this is what we're putting down on top of the timber floor. It's 6mm Jacko board. It's an insulated tile backer board, so it does 2 things really. Gives us a nice flat surface to stick our underfloor heating mat down to, and it insulates, so it stops the heat from the underfloor heating mat going down into the timber floor rather than up through the tiles. So I'm just cutting the Jacko boards so that when I mix up tile adhesive, I can just mix up one lot and lay a load of these at once. Lay the boards in a brick pattern, stagger the joints, don't have joints that are meeting up, so we'll dry lay them and then we'll get them stuck down on the floor. So now you're going to want a flexible tile adhesive, get it mixed up in a bucket, and now I'm using a 6mm notched trowel to pull a bed of tile adhesive across the floor. So we can bed the boards nice and evenly onto the tile adhesive, and then once it's gone off, we'll come back and we'll put some screws in. So once my tile adhesive's down, I get the Jacko boards back in position and start to compact them down onto that tile adhesive. As I'm working, I'm checking the levels because we want to make sure that these boards are dead level. I do this across the whole floor until I reach the doorway. And it doesn't take very long at all to get a perfectly level and insulated floor for your underfloor heating. So I'll leave this a couple of hours, let it go off, and then I'll come back and put the screws and washers in. Now we'll use the Jacko board washers and screws, 300 centres. We're going to screw these as well so that the whole thing is glued and screwed. Roughly 300 centres on them washers. You don't need to be too precise because we've got this down with the adhesive as well, so it's no big issue if they're not exactly 300. And now we can move on to getting the underfloor heating mat in. So this is thermosphere underfloor heating. I got this from Drench Bathrooms along with everything in this bathroom. So I'm working with them on this project. Delivery was speedy, they were really helpful. So if you're looking for a bathroom, go over to Drench and they'll sort you out. The first bit we need to look at is doing a resistance test on the mat to check that there's no damage to the mat, because you don't want to get it down and then find that there's damage to the mat. Now you can use an MFT to do a resistance test. I'm just going to use a multimeter. You can use either. All you need to do is set to ohms like that, and then we'll put the probes on the live and neutral conductors, and we're looking for around 100. 96, that's within tolerance. If you look in the book that you got with your mat, it'll tell you the numbers that you're looking for. Make sure you refer to those so we know the mat's good and we can start rolling it out and getting it in position. So I've marked where the vanity unit goes and where the toilet goes because we don't want to lay mesh under those things. So the key thing with these underfloor heating mats is just follow the instructions. They'll show you in the instructions different layout types. You can do a little bit of a plan and then just roll your mat out, you want to stay 50mm from the wall and 50mm between the heating cables, and then you just lay it out. There'll be times you have to take the mesh out to get this to sort of fit. You can see here I've cut it to change direction, and I'll probably just have to stick this bit of cable down. We mustn't cross cables. So the biggest thing when you're doing this is don't cut the heating cables. It literally says that everywhere on the mat. So just be careful when you're cutting the mesh with the scissors, just don't cut the actual cable itself. So I spend a little bit of time getting everything perfect, laying the mat out in the room. You can see because there's a small room, quite a bit of the cables had to come out of the mesh, and I've restuck it down with bits of mesh. We also need to move any of these washers where the heating cables are going to sit, because we don't want them sitting on top of washers. I'll peel the backing film off, and then I'll be able to stick the mat down to the Jacko board. Now I'm making a small channel in the Jacko board so that I can install my floor sensor. The floor sensor has to go between a couple of bits of heating wire, so I'm just using my router to get enough depth to get the conduit in for the floor sensor. All I then need to do is feed the floor sensor down from where the thermostat is into the floor until it pokes out the end of the conduit. I then push it back very slightly, and I'm going to put the cap on before fixing the conduit and floor sensor in position. The mat can then be stuck back down over the top of the floor sensor, and you can see here the sensor's running between two heating wires. Now we had an issue with a microphone on this next bit, but that cable on the left is the cull tail, and that takes power from the thermostat and warms the mat up. And all I've done is same as before, just routed that in and routed it up to the thermostat. I've retained the cull tail and the conduit back to the wall in that chase there with some all-round band. So all the cables are through, and I've tested the resistance again. So now the mat's down, I know I've not damaged it anywhere, and we can get some self-leveling compound down on the floor. The only trouble is we don't want it to just run under the bath. So I'm getting my old friend the expanding foam out, and we're just going to make a line of this right along the Jacko board so it doesn't run under the bath. You want a flexible self-leveling compound that's good for underfloor heating. The great British weather, I'm getting soaked. Seems to be what we get every day these days, so just gotta get on with it. I've got 5 litres of cold clean water, and I'm just going to add the compound to that. Now I'm just using a paddle mixer to get this to the correct smooth consistency. You don't want any lumps in this, it should be nice and smooth. Right, let it stand for 5 minutes, and then we're going to get it on the floor. 2 tools needed for this: plastering trowel and a spiked roller. Now I'm pouring my self-leveling compound down over the mat, and then I'm using my trowel to work it into all the corners and get it nice and flat. Of course it does find its own level to some degree, but you still have to encourage it to move it where you want on the floor. I'm then just using my spiked roller, which gets any air bubbles out and helps to get it nice and level. I work my way out of the door until we've got a smooth finish. That's exactly what you're looking for. You can see there's a couple of little bits where the mat is sticking through. That is no problem at all. It'll make no difference when we put tile adhesive over the top. We'll let that dry for a couple of hours at least, and then that would be ready to tile the floor. Now, just like before, when you do anything with the underfloor heating, just do a resistance test. So we'll do one last resistance test for today. What we got? No change, perfect. The hard work's done with the underfloor heat, and now all we need to do is wire the thermostat in. There's 3 cables coming in here: the supply, the cull tail, and the sensor. I'm cutting the wires to length and then just stripping off the outer sheath to expose the conductors. Underfloor heating instructions come with a wiring diagram, so you'll know where to put those 3 wires. It's also on the back of the thermostat. So we'll just wire these in to the appropriate terminals. I fixed the back plate to the back box. So we just need to pop this little wire on, back onto the faceplate, and then we just clip the stat on. There we go. I'm just going to let that harden, and we'll wrap it up for the day. We'll come back to it in the morning. So I think this is day 6 now, kind of starting to lose count. The self-leveling compound is dry, and we can move on to tiling the floor. Now, I've done a separate video on tiling this bathroom floor. I'm going to leave a link in the description. You can check it out after this one, but you're still going to see a little bit of how I did it. So I've only got a few days left to get this room done to reach my target. Now you're probably all wondering why I didn't scrape all this old tile adhesive off and why the walls still look a bit of a mess. Here's why. This is cement grey Fibo board. It's a solid plywood board designed for bathrooms. And the great thing with it is it's quicker than tiling because you can just stick it on over all this old tile adhesive. As long as the walls aren't blown or there's any loose bits. Now I love tiling, it's one of my favourite jobs in a bathroom, but this stuff is just so much quicker. It's going to allow me to get the room done a lot faster. These boards are manufactured by a company called Fibo. This is not sponsored. I bought these boards. They cost me, I think it was about £1,800. So it's more expensive than tiling, but I'm just paying for speed. So let's get on with it. I'll show you how I get them on the walls, and then at the end of it you'll see how nice they look. So this next board is going to come into an external trim on this corner because we need to turn the corner. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the height of our trim, and then we're going to cut the width and height of the board to fit this space. I'm just measuring out for my external corner trim, and as it's aluminium I'm cutting it with my Nesdal multi-material blade. These things are super sharp. So what we're going to do, 3 measurements for the width. It's going to sit in the trim there. Now the height, what I'm going to do is take measurements right along the board. So I take 2 or 3 measurements, and that way I know that if there's any lumps and bumps or if the ceiling's running out or anything like that, we could scribe or cut the shape that we need to make sure that the board sits nice and tight without any big gaps at the top or the bottom. So we're going to cut the height, we're going to cut the width, and we're going to leave the male tongue on to go into the female tongue. Now when you're cutting these boards, make sure that you measure 1,000,000 times and cut once, because if you mess one up, unless you can use it somewhere else, there's not really any going back. So make sure you're taking plenty of measurements, and if you have to, use cardboard or some rough templates and make sure you're going to get your cuts absolutely perfect. Right, grab a board, and what we're going to do, we're going to cut the height of this first. Right, so we're going to mark our height, and the best thing to cut these boards with is a track saw if you've got one, but I appreciate they're pretty expensive bits of kit, so if not, use a circular saw with a good blade in it. Now because we've got a radiator pipe coming through the wall on this board, I'm marking out from each edge where that pipe's going to be, and then I'm using a nice sharp hole saw to pass through the board so we've got a hole for that pipe to come through. And now I'm cutting this board down to width, of course leaving that male tongue on because that's the one we need. This male tongue goes into the female tongue, so to join the boards we need to put a bead of silicone along the male tongue, and that's going to seal the 2 boards. And that bead of silicone is not as important over this side of the room, but over where the shower is very critical that we get these boards sealed together nicely, because what would happen if water was to get in this joint, it'd probably blow the laminated side of the board and the board would end up blistering and become a complete mess, and that we definitely don't want. So what we need to do is get a nice bead of sanitary silicone down that male tongue. To stick these to the wall, I've got this Sudal Clear. All it is a hybrid polymer adhesive, and I'm just going to put that on the back of the board in nice thick waves. So you can see nice thick beads of adhesive. Like I say, a hybrid polymer adhesive is probably your best bet. Obviously it depends on the height of the board, but it takes roughly 1 tube of adhesive per board. Now this board's a little easier because it's only a half board. Let's just put the board in roughly. I've put my hands in all the adhesive. Nice, nice. Here's a wipe. Trade wipes. Always have a pack of trade wipes on hand. We'll tip the board and manoeuvre it in place. You have to tip it to get the click lock system to kind of work. And you can see there, it locks in place. If Chris just gives it a bit of a tap at the bottom, that is the board in. So the board is stuck to our adhesive. Now what we're going to do, if I bring you in closer, now your silicone's going to squidge out like that. Now soapy water and a silicone tool, and I'm just going to spray the board joint. And now if I run my tool up that joint, That is the trick to getting the perfect finish, because what the water does is stops the silicone from sticking to the face of the board, but it leaves it in the joint and it just removes the excess. And check that out, perfectly sealed, seamless finish. And that's a very quick and simple way to join the two boards. Now we're just going to put our corner trim on and continue working around the room. So we've moved around to the shower side. This one's not fixed yet. We've just cut the height so it's nice and tight down to the bath. Taps in the way because of these side taps. So we're going to join the two boards together and then we're going to push them both back at once. We'll just be able to slide them in, push them back to the adhesive and they'll be stuck. I've put my adhesive on the wall for these two because it's just going to be easier. If I try and put it on the back of the board, the likelihood is it's going to go all over the taps and all over me. So we lift both boards in place. These full-size boards can be a bit of a tricky one to lift and move around in a small bathroom. I then put my silicone down the male joint and we get the two kind of butted up together as we push them back to the wall and then slide them into the corner. We're making sure we've got a big old fat lump of silicone down the joints because the last thing you want is any water getting in these. When is the charity on?
I don't know, but you'd win it.
You can get internal corner trims. I don't like to use them. I think they're a point where you get leaks. So what I do is I seal this corner as I join the two boards. So there's a nice bit of sealant where the plywood meets this surface. And then of course you get a finishing seal down the corner as well. So you've got 2 layers of sanitary silicone so that no water can get through anywhere. So you can see I'm putting that bead of thick clear silicone down the corner first. And I'm going to take that same approach around the bottom of the bath as well. So you've got 2 layers of silicone around the bottom of the bath and around any board joints. We then slide the boards into position and what's going to happen is that's going to squish all that silicone out of the corner and then we'll get that last silicone seal down the corner as well. So we're on day 2 of the paneling now. We've got the bulk of the room done. We're just on these fiddly bits around the window. If your room's really square, of course it'll be a lot quicker, but all these fiddly bits, box sections and things, take a bit of time. We're just going to cut this bit here now. It is a case of just taking measurements, being nice and accurate with a tape measure, measuring off where the pipes are and cutting around them with the hole saw. So it's been a long old day. I've been at this since 9 AM, but you can see 2 days work and we've got all of the panels up. We've got the box sections done, the shower area done and everything. I've got 1 trim missing because I was 1 short on the delivery, so I'm waiting for that. That'll come in a day or 2. Now I've been so knackered from the 10 to 12 hour days doing this bathroom over the last week that I spent the 9th day just doing all the silicone sealant. I went round the walls, I went round the floors, I went round the bath, getting that professional look and finish because it's easier to do that at this stage than when you've second fixed. I've also managed to get all the bonding in for the underfloor heating, but by this stage I must admit I'm a bit worried about hitting my 10-day target. So join me next time in episode 3, the final episode of this little mini series where we're going to second fix and finish this bathroom. I'll show you the finished result and I'm also going to tell you what a bathroom like this could cost if you did it yourself versus having a tradesman in to do it. Hope you've enjoyed it. Click on one of these because you'll like them as well and I'll see you guys in the next one.